evening and welcome to Meticulous Moments. My name is Juanita Kapp. You can reach me at meticulousmacarons@gmail.com or find me on LinkedIn. Since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the globe, I've had the wonderful privilege to meet a wide array of fantastic individuals. These individuals have truly touched my life in so many positive ways. Amongst this group of people, there are authors, public speakers, life coaches, poets, leaders, and visionaries. They are the unsung heroes of our time. Therefore, I decided to start the Meticulous Moments movement out of a sense of my gratitude. It is my way of giving back to the community. Let us share and reshare their stories in an effort to build a better society. Today we have the wonderful privilege of spending time with the amazing Dr. William Woods, aka Dad. Dr. William G. Woods is a full professor in the Forbes School of Business and Technology. He currently serves as lead faculty of the Master of Arts in Organizational Management and as co-chair of the Faculty Council for the University of Arizona Global Campus. He teaches leadership, organization, and management courses. Previously, he has served as Faculty Senate Chair and Vice Chair at Ashford University. He served on the Board of Directors for the Bridgepoint Education Political Action Committee. In 2015, he served on a workshop panel in Queensland, Australia. In 2022, he was selected to give the keynote address at the Juneteenth Freedom Celebration in Clinton, IA. In January 2018, he was presented with the Martin Luther King Jr. Peace and Justice Award in the state of Iowa. In 2018, he authored the State of Wisconsin's Peace Week proclamation that was signed by the governor. In 2017, he also authored the State of Iowa Peace Week proclamation that was signed by the governor of Iowa. He was awarded the City of Clinton 2012 Human Rights Award. He served as a regional director for the World Association of Academic Doctors. He also chaired the international conferences in 2017 and 2018. In 2021, he served as a moderator at the Encore Thought Leader Conference. He has also spoken at conferences in Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, Louisiana, Nevada, Maryland, Missouri, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin in the United States. And from all of those details, we realize this evening we are in the company of a fantastic leader. Welcome to this session with Dr. William Woods. Good day, Meticulous Moments audience. Today we have the pleasure of spending some valuable time with the wonderful and amazing Dr. William Woods, aka Dad. Welcome, Dr. Woods.
Thank you, Jay. I'm so glad to be here with all of you today. I'm coming to you from United States, in the middle of the country. It's about 1,700 miles from the east border and another 2,000 miles from the west border. So we're really right in the middle of the country here in Iowa. I've been a teacher for about 20 years now, and at the university level as a full professor, and I've really enjoyed my job, and it's really thrown me into the realm of leadership. I lead 38 professors, and I really like working with them, and it's really brightened up my life being able to have this occasion to do things with them in this point in my life. I'm closing in fast on retirement. It doesn't mean that I'm going to quit working and being associated with people in the public. And so here I am today, and I'm glad to be with you.
Thank you so much. It's amazing to think that you are all the way there in the United States and you are speaking with me and I'm in South Africa. How wonderful is technology?
Where I work, they say technology changes everything, and it does, because I remember back in the 1960s, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights leader here in the United States, He says, it's amazing that you can get on a flight and be somewhere across seas, and you could hick in New York and cup somewhere in England. So hiccups. It's,
I
things are
love
so
that. I
fast.
love that. I always tell people when when we are talking and they are from the States Eastern Standard Time, I always say, well, they are. It's morning with you, Dad, and then with me it would be afternoon. So I always tell people now they are talking to someone in the future because I'm 6 hours
Exactly.
ahead.
Yeah. The future looks wonderful.
Oh, thank you very, very much. And we can hear that we are in wonderful leadership hands today. Tell us more about your role as a lecturer, being in, having 38 professors with you that report to you. Tell us more about that, please.
Okay, on the lecture side, now I work online, where for most of my career, I've actually worked in person on university campus. I worked for Kaplan University, St. Ambrose University, and now for the University of Arizona Global Campus. And I love doing that type of work. And, over the years, one of the things that I always have to do is be prepared for change, because the
Yeah.
students are often changing in front of me over the years. Their
Mm.
needs change, how life works for them changes. And, it used to be that you could lecture, lecture, lecture.
Yeah.
And then students, their attention span got shorter. And so they
Mm.
weren't interested in lecture, lecture, lecture. They were more interested in being interactive with you and actually having things to do, and that they could interact with each other in the course. And so you don't fill up the whiteboard or back when I started, the chalkboard with all these notes and have them copy them, and you're not handing out notes and stuff like that, but you're connecting them with information and asking them to synthesize the information. And now you're asking them to critically assess the information and decide how they want to apply it in their careers. And so that's different. Now, there's another aspect of me in lecturing, and that has to do with me touring the United States. And, there's 50 states here, and
Wow.
I've actually spoken in 24 of them in different locales. I've spoken to thousands, and then I've spoken to hundreds, and then I've spoken to small audiences of 35 to 45 people. And whatever it is, I like doing it. And there's one time I thought I was going to have a big audience, and I had a small audience. And my guest speaker told me, he says, I'm so used to this. His name was Jan Moskowitz from Chicago, Illinois. He says,
Yeah.
sometimes you just got to adjust to your audience. The biggest lesson I've ever had about presentations. And so I got off of this big stage, took my microphone and walked down into the audience and gave my whole presentation within arm's length of them. And so I really like doing that. It was a wonderful lesson. And the thing about Jan Moskowitz was he put his arm around me, because he could see I was a little dispirited because I was expecting a much larger audience, and I didn't get it that time. And that was probably about 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago.
Wow.
And so to have something like that happen, what a great teacher he was.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. That is amazing. There's two things that come up. The first thing is that I agree with you. Leaders have to be adaptable. Leaders have to be adaptable to a situation. I think that's one of the major skills, especially in the hybrid contemporary times that we live. We have to do things as the situation calls for it. And the second thing I'm thinking of is a quote by Daniel Gomez, a wonderful friend of mine. And he had a post the other day on Facebook, and he said, never trust a coach that doesn't have a coach.
I'm
So I'm
applauding
thinking,
that.
yeah, you are 30 years ago, and you also had a mentor, someone mentoring you. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Throughout my career, I've really loved to have mentors. And, one of my mentors has retired just recently this past year.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a void in my life. Here I am in my 60s, and I'm proud to admit that I had a mentor. His name was Rob Engelson, and he was about 15 years older than me. And he just kept working. But he was so full of wisdom, so full of knowledge and so full of understanding that, I could go to him and talk to him in confidence and share with him things that I was concerned about and ask him how he had worked on those things. And he would let me know. And so I had one up on one other people because I had Rob Ingleson in my ear giving me great advice. And so, throughout your careers, throughout your lives, it has to do with where you work or who you're parenting or who you're relating to. It's always good to have that person that's outside of your life who's going to look at you in a way that's non-biased and tell you the truth and help you from that point. And so that's very, very important to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm thinking of something that happened at the dojo the other day. The sensei, the Kiyoshi, was standing in the dojo, and a little boy came to him, and I was witnessing this event unfolding. And the little boy looked at the sensei and he said, because they were talking about the coaches at school, the cricket coach and the rugby coach, because the Kiyoshi, the sensei, is also a teacher. And the little boy tugged on the gi of the sensei and he said, Sensei, who is the best coach? And they were talking names there. I'm not familiar with the school teachers there, but they were talking names. And the sensei kept quiet. And I wondered, I was interested in what he was going to say. And the little boy tugged on his gi again, and the sensei turned around and he said, and the boy said, who's the best coach? And without giving a name, the sensei looked around and he looked at this little boy very seriously, he poked a face and he said, the best coach is the honest coach. And I thought that was amazing.
I'm glad that you said that because there's Greenleaf, Richard Greenleaf, I believe, and he's the one who developed the servant leadership model. And the servant leadership model, one of the things about it is the person is a person of integrity. They believe in honesty and they model that behavior. And I can follow honest people even if I don't agree with them. Because sometimes I may have my own bias. And I may be taken into a new area that I decided that I had written off at a different time in my life. And all of a sudden, here comes this person and they say, we need to do this. And we'll do that. And, sometimes you get into some difficult situations and you have to face those things sometimes head on. But if you are dealing with honest people, it makes it much easier, even though it doesn't feel easy inside of you. A good example of this is when you've had to deal with a boss that you never liked. And it might have been a boss that's really, really hard on you. But then there's the thing about reconciliation. And so maybe someone has told you, you need to try to understand that person. And I've had that happen to me before. Matter of fact, I think I had it happen to me recently. But it was a good lesson for me. And so I just sat down and thought about it. And then I went to that person and I talked to him, and literally it seemed like everything worked out overnight because I forgot about myself and I put the other person first. And that person was willing to listen to me. And what a relief. And so you're going to find this throughout life, no matter what you're doing, that people of integrity, people of honesty, people who are willing to open up and go the extra mile with you just to achieve a simple thing like the words, sorry about that, I'm sorry. So there you go.
I love that.
Well, I have all sons. And so for you to come into my life, I needed a daughter. And so you filled that little void in there. Actually, it's a big void. And so it's kind of neat. It's more than kind of neat. It is neat. And so I enjoy our time together, and it's a bright spot. So this thing about honesty, sometimes we have a hard road to go to get to it. Sometimes, like in parenting, you may find that your kids are being dishonest with you. And a lot of times you can't make a child instantly tell you the
Yeah.
truth. You have to work with them for a while. It may take a couple of days. It might even take years for them to fess up to whatever it is that they're not being honest with you about. And so
Yeah.
as you walk down that road with them, it's really something very, very special. It may be a neighbor, like my mom had a neighbor who was a very troublesome lady.
Oh,
She would call the authorities on me and my brothers,
yeah.
and we hadn't done anything. She would call on other neighbors, and then they hadn't done anything. This lady would just do these things,
Yeah.
and it was horrible because you'd have to deal with the authorities, and then you prove that everything is okay, and then it was okay, but it wasn't okay with that lady. She didn't like losing.
Yeah.
And after decades, literally decades, one day she came to my mother, and my mother let her in the house, as my mother always had over all those decades. And
Wow.
she would sit and listen to the lady, and she would talk to the lady. And that lady came to her decades later and says, you have been my only friend in life, to my mother. So my mother had to work with her dishonesty for decades
My goodness.
and was a friend to her better than anyone else.
My
And that
goodness.
lady admitted it, confirmed it. And that taught me a lesson, not to
Yeah.
give up on people.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful, wonderful testimony and a wonderful lesson to learn. Absolutely. To labor with that person, even though, sometimes their intentions toward you are not pure, but to still give that love and acceptance and that leadership, because she was showing leadership to this lady, giving her guidance. And that leads us to our next question. Now, I know that you have had so many leadership positions in society over the course of your life. Would you like to elaborate on that for us, please?
Okay. One of the leadership positions that I had, I actually created myself.
Wow.
And, I was actually looking at the churches in my community, and I saw that they weren't very united. And I thought, according to what their belief system was, that it was very, very important that they model the behavior for the community around them. And see, I live in a area where there's 5 cities together. Davenport, Iowa, Bettendorf, Iowa, Rock Island, Illinois, which is another state, Moline, Illinois, and East Moline, Illinois. And then there's little towns around those also. And so some of the folks in the community, church community, they wouldn't even talk to each other if they were in different denominations and stuff. And so I thought, how can we do anything about this? And my wife said, well, you know what? You need to do something that's bigger than yourself. Because that one event that I talked to you about with Jan Moskowitz, that failed, but it was successful at the same time, but it just felt like failure. Well, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association told me, okay, if you're going to have us come to your city, you will need to get the churches together in your city and get them working together and sign petitions that they're willing to support us coming to your community. And so I went to hundreds of churches. And at first that was really, really rough. And this is going to be a situation where you look at defeat. But at the same time, you have a vision of what can be. And that's important in leadership. Yes. And one of the first lessons I want to tell you is the energy that you are applying to a situation, possibly no one else has that energy. And no one else will have that persistence except for you. And they can't see what you can see so far as a possible great outcome. But you have to see for them until they can see for themselves. That's exactly what parents do. When parents are leading their children, children want to do all different kind of things, and their friends are telling them, let's go do things that we possibly shouldn't do. But you are looking at your kids and telling them the truth about what they need to do, and you are seeing for them until they can see for themselves. And so you're sowing that seed in their lives so they can grow into that kind of person. So what I had to do was, for over 400 churches, see for them. And then what happened was they started working together.
Wow.
And working together and working together. And, I had to send out letters to all of them. I had to meet with them one-on-one. And at the same time, I was working my full-time job as an assistant professor at St. Ambrose University. And so this meant staying up late at night. And, a lot of leaders, they do that. They burn the midnight oil in their lamps. And they're so steered by the vision that they have. And remember, sometimes the vision that you have is not the vision that other people would have. So other people might come to you and they want positions of authority in what you're doing. Well, let me have control over this group and give me control over this other group and give me an office chair and give me a desk and let me answer the phone and be able to direct them. And it's like, okay, first, let's start with my vision. And here's why we are getting together, because we need to all work together. We need to all care for one another, and we need to spread that message. And then we can do something special as we reach out to these cities. And so that was my approach. And after a while, I came across a man. His name was Jeff Toomberg of Whitey's Ice Cream. And I wrote about him and his family recently in a textbook that I put a new edition in. And it's amazing because this guy really he believed in, I'll say, Jesus Christ right here and now. And
Amen.
He lived out his faith in a way where it didn't look at his riches and what he had. And it looked at how he cared for people. And he's very generous with charities. He's very generous so far as serving in the public. And I felt that this guy had that integrity. And I was thinking about, I needed someone bigger than myself. And when he came on board, all of a sudden, so many other people came on board to join in on this process. And so that made it so much easier for me. And so he was at the forefront and everything. And the conclusion to this is that everyone started working together, and then we all of a sudden had over 25,000 people, I believe.
Wow, that's
attended our events. Yes, 25,000 people in one mind.
Wow.
They wanted to better themselves, and they wanted to step out and acquire faith in Jesus Christ. And so it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. That's the most successful thing I've ever been a part of. But at first, I felt like I was failing. And then all of a sudden, one person after another would come and aid me. And the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association didn't give up on what I was trying to do. And then there was a great victory. And years later, people still come to me about that. And they will tell me, this is where I first believed. I'm like, yes. Wonderful. And so, amazing.
That is just wonderful. Yeah. I'm thinking of Jesus Christ as our greatest example of servant leadership, making the big impact, also bringing people that didn't really fit into the same categories, his disciples, together, giving them one mind, showing them the love of God. That is just astonishing. That is something tremendous that your persistence paid off. You were persistent and it paid off.
Well, I tell you what, when you bring up Jesus Christ as the greatest servant leader, I did a presentation one time in Davenport, Iowa, and I copied off of what he did. And what I mean by that is I was talking to people about coming together from their different races that are in the Quad Cities, but they needed to do it with a different attitude because of the divisions that existed. And my wife, she's Caucasian or white. And of course I'm not. And so we were up on the stage, and I brought a chair out, and I sat her in the chair, and then I brought this foot basin out and filled it full of water. And I washed her feet in front of everybody, and I dried them, and I kissed her feet. And what was important about that is that's what Jesus Christ did. Historically, he washed his disciples' feet. And see, normally in that society, that was the job of the servant. It wasn't the job of the leader. And so he was willing to humble himself so that he could teach them that, hey, if you're going to lead, you're going to serve.
Yes.
The greatest of you must be the least.
I love that. I love that, and I agree completely. And what I want to find out from you is, where did this wonderful transformational leadership journey of yours start? Because if we look back over what you've accomplished, the people that you've touched, the people that you've brought together in the name of Jesus, what was the defining moment in your life where this leadership journey started, where you realized, I'm a leader and I need to live up to this calling?
It didn't happen overnight. It happened over life.
Lovely.
Because my parents started teaching me to love my brothers. And then they started teaching me to be good at other kids. And I was that kid that was rejected growing up. And I was teased vociferously. I would have the size of my head made fun of, the size of my ears made fun of. Matter of fact, as you can see right now, my head looks more like a chocolate egg, but people would say I had a blockhead, like it was square. And it wasn't. What they were, things that they were saying to me wasn't even based in reality, but it was cutting me apart. And so in some aspects, I became a person of hatred. But then as I had this great desire to love, I also, learned through the scriptures, I had a responsibility to love. And so I came back to what I was taught by my parents. And I used to watch my dad, and my dad is the first person that really sold into my life that led to transformation. Like one day he said the only thing that could reach my mind. He said, "Son, you'll never be satisfied in life until you get your education." And over the years of me working without an education and tearing up my back and having surgeries, and one day I was working out in a landfill where all the refuse of people's homes and the garbage out of their streets, that's where that stuff goes. It's the only job I could get because of my physical disability at the time. And that's where my dad's words rang out to me the greatest. "Son, you'll never be satisfied in life until you get your education." So I didn't even know if I could go to college and how I was going to afford college. And when I decided to go to the local college, one professor saw my stick-to-itiveness. His name was Father Terry Lansgard. And he said, "I've been watching you, and my people are interested in you. We're going to pay for all your books throughout college." And I thought, here I am, a father of three. That is perfect.
That's amazing.
And that taught me the value of having an ethical center that was going to do things the right way. Another professor taught me a lesson too. He was actually homosexual, and I always treated him like I treated everybody else, as trying to be good to everybody, greet him with a smile every day, and be kind. no matter how I was feeling. And sometimes that's difficult. And
Yes.
this other student was making fun of him continually. And one day I went to class to take my test, and I actually did not finish the test. I was so sick. I was coughing continually. My nose was continually running and everything. And so he said, why don't you sit in this other room and try to take the test? I fell asleep on the test. I had 60% of the test done. All my answers were right, but I just didn't have it to finish the test.
Yeah.
And I had always gotten A's on his test. And I went to him later at his office, and I apologized for not finishing his test. And he says, don't even worry about it. I know you know the material. And he said, go ahead and finish the test. And so then that student that had been making fun of him and what he believed and everything came up to him. She says, I heard her say it too. I got a D on your test. Was wondering what I could do to get a higher score. And he said to her, you get what you have earned.
Yeah.
And that taught me a lesson about, your consistent behavior.
Yeah.
And being kind to other people.
Yeah.
No matter who they are, where they are.
Yeah.
That you could impact them.
Yes. Amen.
Yes. So that let me know I was on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was amazing was once I went on to the university.
Yeah.
And I was starting to give speeches in class. This one person came up to me, and he was the head of the MBA program. And he told me, we've been watching you, and the professors have been talking about you, and they notice how you give speeches in class, and the conviction that you have, and the strength with which you speak, with which you speak. And he says, we've decided to pay for your master's of business administration degree.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So, the way that I was acting, according to what I knew and believed, people that I didn't know who were watching me, I was actually influencing them.
Yeah.
And see, that's one of the things I want you to know, that you may not be in a leadership position, but you can be a thought leader by how you talk to people, how you treat people. And so that you're grooming yourself. Yeah. And so you should never, ever, ever discount anyone else.
Yes.
That every person that you come in contact with, you are sowing into their lives.
Yeah.
And you are making a difference in their lives. And you never know when that's going to come around back to you. And so these were people that saved me thousands and thousands of dollars that I could now concentrate that particular money on my children. And by the way, it became my first teaching job also. So that's how I entered into teaching in higher education, because they were interested in me.
Wonderful.
Not an application.
Yeah. That's wonderful. It's an amazing journey, because they immediately saw the leadership in you. They saw how you conducted yourself. They saw how you were treating other people. I mean, we know that you're an amazing salted speaker, and I know that you've spoken over. You mentioned how many 20-something states in America?
Close to 20 years of teaching, and then I've spoken in 24 different states. 24 different states. Amazing. Plus in South Africa, there in Pretoria. And I've given 5 presentations to groups in South Africa this year, virtually through the internet. and I've
Beautiful.
spoken
You
in
said, yeah.
Australia also.
Look at that. That's global. So you're an international public speaker, in other words. You're an international public speaker. And what I love about your approach and what you've mentioned to us is that you treat everyone with dignity. And I think that's very important for leaders, is to recognize that they should treat every single person with dignity. I make it a point. I also write quotes in my leadership journal that I started a few years ago. And I one of the big things for me is when I engage with anyone, it doesn't matter where they live, who they are, what car they drive, what leadership position they have. I treat the CEO the same as I treat the person that's mopping the floors of the shopping center, because they are both showing leadership. And if we didn't have either of them, we wouldn't be able to conduct business and do the things that we need to do. So it brings me to the next question, and I'm very interested to know your opinion on which attributes should an effective leader have? What are the things that should stand out, be part and parcel of that person's leadership skills?
Okay. When you think about that, I believe that kindness comes first.
Yeah.
Because you really, really have to give people a reason to listen to you. And so I'll give you an example of this. When I did come to Pretoria and spoke at a conference there, I talked to a person and I asked them, could you go to the market and get me 24 roses? And I gave them the money, and they went to the market and got me 24 roses. And so when I went up to give my presentation, I asked the ushers to hand out a rose to each row.
Wow.
And so when I began my presentation, I told the audience what I wanted them to do. I said, I want you to hand the roses to the person next to you and tell that person you are loved and you are needed. You know, a lot of people on the face of the earth do not hear those words a day in their lives.
Yeah.
And it hardens their hearts. And so it could be, even though I was dealing with some affluent people or people who were aspiring to be affluent, they needed to hear that, because sometimes maybe you've heard it throughout your life, but you haven't heard it lately.
Yes, yes.
And they are reminded just by those two little sentences, you are loved and you are needed. You know, some people fail to love other people. And so by having them think about that, man, this other person is loved. Maybe I should love them. And to present them temporarily with this gift of a rose. And I want you to think about a rose too, because a rose often has a sweet aroma. But quite often too, roses have thorns on their stems. Yeah. And so that's us. Like, there's something sweet about us, even in the most hardened people, but we also have our thorns. But everybody in those roles in that presentation that day were able to accept the rose with its thorns and with its sweet aroma and work with it there. And see, that goes back to the lesson that Jan Moskowitz taught me. Take what you've been given and work with that. And so that's another thing about a leadership or a leader. Don't judge a person by what you see.
Yes, very
judge
important.
The person by what you can do for them.
Yes, wow. I love that. I love that. That is amazing. And I think the world needs leaders that are non-judgmental, because I see so many things happening in society. I see that we are using those skills that we have. Sometimes people use them to hurt others instead of elevating others. So I always like to tell the people that I have the pleasure of training, the privilege of training, or whether it's discipleship or leadership training or doing life coaching or counseling with them, I always tell them that we are there as we rise. we lift, and we are there to elevate each other and support each other and love each other. I completely agree with you. And it just brings into perspective once again that sometimes we don't know what people go through behind closed doors. We don't know the struggles that they face. They're not going to walk around and tell everybody. Sometimes people are ashamed or hurt or scared. And just giving them that love and affection and acceptance can make a whole difference in their lives. I agree with you.
Yeah. You know, another thing is that, and I kind of talked about this when I gave you the example of my mother with the
Yes.
lady who was kind of questionable. But leaders must be consistent. Your behavior must be consistent. And it must be consistent over time, you know, because otherwise people will say you're what they call two-faced.
Oh,
Good
yes.
with some people, horrible with other people. Nice some days, just nasty other days, like the weather.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And you know, when we are consistent, what I'm thinking is when we are consistent, people trust us. And then they allow us to lead them. And when there's synergy, the goal is accomplished in such a better manner. Relationships are formed. Everything just pans out better if there's trust involved.
Yes. You know what? The other thing is to be persistent.
Yeah.
The thing about being persistent is everyone around you can give up,
Yes.
but you don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
You may be the only person in the middle of the ocean that knows where the shore is.
True.
And so you're going to lead them to where they need to go, even though they don't understand why they got to get there totally. And even if they can get there. And see, leaders do this in organizations. It's one of the reasons why you have really great organizational turnarounds. And, you know, one of the things that happened here in the United States, Chrysler Car Corporation was failing miserably. Everything that they were doing was failing, it seemed like. And they were on the verge of bankruptcy. And then there was one man who decided to take a different approach, and they hired him in. His name was Lee Iacocca. He had the idea for a minivan that he had worked on for another company, but that company decided to fire him because he was a flashy dresser, I guess. And they didn't like that. And they loved everybody to wear gray suits and black ties. And Lee Iacocca wasn't that guy. So it's kind of like a challenge to leadership. So when he left there, he took everything that he had notes, and he developed a minivan instead of regular cars, a minivan, and that led to the turnaround of Chrysler organization. And see, they had to believe in this guy they didn't know. And they had to listen to him. He had to steer them with his vision. And then he had to, one, be consistent with his behavior, but be persistent in the goal of convincing everyone that they're going to be successful, make the cars that I want made, and then let's go from there. And the company came back, and it still exists today. They had troubles years later after he retired, and they got bought out by a European company, but they made it. And so that thing, the consistent behavior and the persistence, which is a kind of like an urgency. And sometimes it will keep you up at night. And you're thinking like, you know, one of the things that I do is I sleep with a notepad kind of, and I can wake up and write some notes to myself, because I don't know why it comes to me in my sleep, in my dreams.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just does. And then I can get to work and start working on those things, and then putting them together, and then start recruiting folks at work to be on my side on doing something. And it's wonderful. Like there's this textbook that needed editing, and I alluded to that earlier. Well, one of the things that we wanted to do is in a management approach is put diversity into the textbooks. And when I say we, it was me. And so I recruited different authors.
Wow.
And so they started writing into the particular textbook, and the book just came out in the last week for the university to use. And yeah, I didn't know my name was going to be in the title page of the book, and
Oh,
all these other professors'
wonderful.
names are in the title page of the book. So they couldn't see where I was going with everything, but I told them what I needed, and they gave me what I asked for. Then in every chapter of the book, here's
Yeah.
these vignettes of diversity that the students get to read about. And over this class that I've just rewritten, now it's part of that class. And we're going to have many, many students take that class. And so it's going
Wonderful.
to have an effect on them.
Yeah.
And that took persistence. And now there's kind of like a little bit of a celebration going on over how that worked out. And so I began that process last year. And so
Yes.
when you're going for a year working on the same thing, sometimes the doldrums can hit.
Yes.
And is it all worth it? Even you,
Yeah.
the leader, can have that. And so you
True.
might, am I on the right track? Only you will know when you find out. And,
Surprise.
yes.
Yeah.
And so for all the things that you get involved in,
Yeah.
everything is a lesson, just like every person has value. And even the least of people you can learn from.
Yes.
There was this person, you would not look at him as a leader,
Yeah.
but that person led me. All I know is that his name is Pablo.
Pablo.
And Pablo was homeless, and he had his shopping cart that he
Yeah.
would push around down in the business district of San Diego. And I was visiting San Diego that day. And, what I usually do when I go to another city is I spend time out on the streets with some of the homeless people. And quite often I'm wearing a suit because I'm speaking at a conference, and I'll sit down on the street or on the sidewalk with them and talk to them for a while. And Pablo actually came up to me in San Diego, over 2,000 miles away from my home. So I didn't know him and he didn't know me. In Pablo's hand, he had a corn husk little cross with a corn husk little rose that he made.
Wow.
And he shook his head. He says, I just want you to have this.
Oh,
And
it's amazing.
I still have that. And this is like probably 15 years later.
Yeah. Wow.
Pablo impacted me in a way that no one else could.
Yeah.
For a homeless person with tattered, beat up, dirty clothes.
Yes.
They come up to me, and here he's got his best friend in the world, his little dog that he's leading around, and his shopping cart. And he had many of these little corn husk crosses with roses on them in his shopping cart. And so I told him, Pablo, I have a gift for you also. So I gave him something back. And he didn't even ask me for money, but I wanted him to have it because I wanted him to keep on doing what he was doing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I saw Pablo one more time, but I can never, ever, ever visit San Diego without checking to see if I can see Pablo out on the streets.
Wow.
And so, what a wonderful guy. What a wonderful person.
Amazing. Wow. Giving of himself, he had so little, and still he wanted to give of himself. And it's making me think of something that happened to me the other day. At my home, I built a stone wall. And I contacted one of the farmers and I asked him, can you bring some of your men to help us with the wire and the rocks, and everything that we needed to do. And we built that wall with our hands. But there was one worker that couldn't find a job because people didn't want to employ him because he has his features. I think he burned with warm water when he was a child. And for that simple reason, people just wouldn't employ him. And the farmer came to me after we finished the wall, and he asked me, Juanita, can Toko, that's his name, Xhosa man, can Toko work for you? And I said, of course. I mean, we built the wall together. I just moved into the house. I need a gardener. It's a big garden. And Toko has been with me ever since. And the other day, it was extremely cold. The wind was blowing. There was a little bit of mist. And it was really, really cold because we are in the winter time. And I saw Toko at the gate, and I always call at the window. Then I say, Toko, every morning it's our ritual. Then he says, Mama, he calls me Mama. And then I know to take the key to Toko. So this morning I thought, because he knows if it's so cold, he shouldn't come to work because he's an elderly man already. But that morning I thought, I heard the dogs bark, and I called at the window. I said, Toko. And Toko said, Mama. And I knew he was here, and I walked out. And I was about to tell him, it's so cold, don't worry today to come to work, go home. And he said, Mama, it's so cold today. And I said, yes, Toko, and I was going to tell him in my next sentence, go home because go keep warm, we don't want you to get flu. And he looked at me, he said, Mama, I want to get some wood for you. And I said, but it's so cold. He said, no, I'm going to get some wood for you because you need to have the fireplace burning today. And so he went out for about 5 hours, and he went into the field, and he brought wood back, and he chopped it up in small pieces, and he had lunch. And then I said to him, it's so cold, you need to go home. He didn't want to have some coffee. He just said, no, he's happy now. He cut some wood for me, chopped some wood, and he's going to go home. And I looked at him and I said to him, Toko, that is leadership. I said, because you did something that nobody expected of you. And you went out in that weather because you wanted to make my day better. And I thanked him. And I love that. And, sometimes I'm thinking of the fact that leaders deal with disappointment. Sometimes we have a great day as a leader, like you said. Sometimes we have a great project. Sometimes we don't. How, in your opinion, do leaders deal with disappointments or failure? Sometimes they feel that they failed, and they turn it inward, and they feel like it's a reflection on them. How do leaders deal with disappointments?
Okay, using that term disappointment and failure together, I think one of the things that you have to realize is that though something fails,
yes,
you're not a failure.
Amen.
And that's really, really important, because we can internalize failure, and it becomes a part of this internal dialogue within our heads. It's only existing between your two ears.
Yes.
And what's amazing about it is no one else knows it, that it's there until you open your mouth. And you may be downing yourself to other people, and you're actually asking them at that point to believe that you're a failure. And you know what? One of the things that leaders do is they get other people who are very positive people and have experienced some level of success to be around them, so that when you are having difficulty, you can call them and say, man, I need to hear a good word today.
Awesome.
Joan, I need to hear something good today. What's been going on good in your life? And so then they hear those things, and then that kind of gives them a boost. And then another person that they have around them can give them a boost. And that resupplies their energy. And, I read this book about everybody having a love bank. And I'm going to apply what I'm saying. And that when people come to you or you go to people, you are either making deposits into their love, or you are making withdrawals from their love. And so if you are good to them, you're making a deposit. If you're being positive with them in a way that is beneficial, you are making a deposit into their love bank. And see, when you have more resources to deal with, then you can do more for other people. You can lead more effectively. And so knowing that one thing is something that makes it important for you to pay attention to that and start practicing it.
Yes.
Because you sow into other people's lives and they sow into your lives. And when it feels like you're failing, be persistent and hold on.
Absolutely.
And hold on.
Amen, amen to that. You recently, and I saw the newspaper clip and I was extremely proud. And you recently gave the keynote speech at the Juneteenth celebration. Would you like to tell us more about that day? It looked amazing.
Okay. So in 1865, President Lincoln of the United States of America, he made the Emancipation Proclamation, and he gave that, and he was freeing the slaves. And what was amazing about that was the Emancipation Proclamation was only for the slave states. So we had been fighting the Civil War in this country. Over 600,000 troops had died in that war. No other war since combined that our troops have fought in. We fought in the Korea and Vietnam, World War I and World War II. And all of those wars combined, we have never lost. Even in our engagements in Afghanistan and in Iran, Iraq, we have not lost that many people in all those wars or conflicts combined as we lost in just the Civil War alone. And at that time, it was our southern states versus our northern states. And, the northern states lost about 400,000, and the southern states lost over 200,000. And the thing about that is the southern states had less of a population. The big cities were basically in the northern states. And so the northern states were just spinning person after person. Well, the deal about that was he made the Emancipation Proclamation. He had visited the Gettysburg graveyard where the soldiers, a lot of the northern soldiers were buried. And so he was hallowing that ground, and he gave his Gettysburg address. And so that seemed to steer people up. And then came the Emancipation Proclamation that just set the slaves free in the South. Some of the northern states still had slaves. The problem with it is that even though the South lost the war and the slaves have been set free, in some states like Texas, it took 2 more years for the people to find out that they had been set free. And so when one of our generals rode into Galveston, Texas, he made the proclamation that those people were now free. And so even though the United States celebrates July 4th as their freedom date from British colonialism and the British crown, the Black people of this country, my ancestors overall, were not set free at that time until Juneteenth occurred. And so it was quite the honor for me to be selected to give the keynote address on that day. And see, we've been free now all these over 100 years, well over 100 years. But in this country, if you set aside the thought of slavery and you think about freedom and the blessings that can come with freedom, freedom to choose who you want to be and freedom to choose what you want to do constructively in life, to go where you want to go without restrictions. We haven't fully embraced freedom in this country because there are people in this country who are held captive by drug abuse.
Yes, I mean,
people in this country who are held captive by spousal abuse.
Yes.
There are people in this country who are held captive by parental or child abuse.
Yes.
And then there's people who are held captive because they live in situations of perpetual violence that are spread across many neighborhoods. And I asked the people that day to never, ever stop giving up on freedom until the people in this country can see the value of freedom for all of those who are being abused in some way or another. And yes, there's also people held captive by verbal abuse that affects their ability to have what we call emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Because they can't, their emotions are so messed up inside.
Yes.
And because their emotions are so messed up inside, they aren't able to, like we do in emotional intelligence, sense other people's emotions and be able to work with those emotions effectively in a way that builds those other people up. Because sometimes abuse can make you very, very selfish because it puts you in survival mode.
Yes.
And we shouldn't be in survival mode unless there's a drought, a famine, or dire weather situation that floods. And we here in America, we have hurricanes and we have tornadoes and we have floods and those kind of devastations, and we have earthquakes and we have fires that spread into cities that come from our forest lands and stuff. And so wiping out people's property. And so, but when we are dealing with people at a basic level, dealing with their psychological needs and, dealing with their physiological needs, dealing with their esteem needs and their belongingness needs. And see, the things that I'm saying to you right now were developed by Abraham Maslow. Everyone has needs. Absolutely. And those needs go to their very core of their existence. I know that. We all should know that. And as you concentrate on those things, then as you fulfill your needs and are aware of your behaviors, and know that everybody else needs to be built up. Whatever's been happening to you in life, forgive it.
Amen.
If you don't forgive it, then you can't help other people to be forgiving. And matter of fact, a lot of people who were bad people who treated you poorly or treated you adversely or said things to you that they should have never said to anybody else on the face of the earth, they forget about you. And they move on. So you are held captive by their behaviors and their things that they did, and they aren't even aware of it any longer.
Best
Free
practice.
yourself by forgiving them.
Best practice to forgive and let go. Not let that be a weight on you. I agree.
And you know what? Sometimes forgiveness takes years, and so you have to forgive them over and over again. Every time you think about them in a negative sense. And I will tell you this, the abusers that I have, and this includes having my clothes ripped off of me in public and dragged.
My goodness.
And not total nudity, but I had to forgive them. And one of the ways that I started forgiving them was praying that God would bless them. And do good for them and send people into their lives that could impact the way that they think. Those were the times that I was set free. And those are things over time that are transformational and sows into your leadership style so that you're not only a servant leader, not only an ethical leader, but you are transformational, and that you can see in the beginning that something has to change. And even though you don't know if it's going to work, you know that something is out there that is better, and the things that you're experiencing now cannot last and will not last forever. And so that you're going to outlive how you think today and see a brighter tomorrow, even if no one else can see it, because the best tomorrow happens up here, happens in here. And then it starts to spring out from you, like Jesus said, living waters.
Amen. I love that. And as leaders, it's very difficult. I think that's the most important or the most difficult part as a leader, because of everything that we go through. And not everybody is always, singing our praises. Sometimes people don't like us. Sometimes it's a personality clash. Sometimes it's another issue. But it's very, very difficult, I think, sometimes for leaders to believe in themselves. It is something that you have to actively work on Self-love is a part of that. Getting your strength and power from the Word of God, and people that really catch your vision and that appreciate you as a human being, not thinking of the naysayers or the people that are criticizing you, blessing them, like you said, praying for them, but really believing in yourself and keeping that focus. Keeping that focus and saying, well, I've got this mission. I have to be honest to this mission. I have to conduct it. It is an anointing that is on my life. And just going back to the Word of God and the Holy Spirit to just keep us motivated and focused on our goal. And that brings me to my next question. What is your life philosophy?
It's really, really simple. It's just to love other people. I don't worry about loving myself. And we're quite often taught about loving ourselves.
Yes.
But when you love other people, sometimes you are loved by, like I said, the Pablos of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're not even expecting that love to come around to you. Pablo had no reason to share love with me because he didn't know me and I wasn't even from his city.
Yeah.
But he did anyway. And when you most need someone else to help you, things just happen.
Yeah.
When you're a person of love.
Yes.
And you know, sometimes, like just recently, I thought I was going to have to pay a bill for something. Yeah. And things weren't going right. And so I just went into the dentist. They took a look at my teeth and told me what I needed to do. And it's a longtime dentist of ours, and I just hadn't been in a few years, embarrassingly so. But she just says, "We're not charging you for this visit." I said, "You're kidding."
Wow.
And the very next visit I went in there, I'm sitting in the chair and she's drilling into this one tooth to put a crown on it. Yeah. And I told her a joke and so the lights wouldn't blind me. They put on these dark sunglasses and I just looked at her and I said, "Dr. Cruiseville, I just had to say one thing to you. Both of us need to see what's going on in my mouth, and since I can't see, I'm just going to have to rely upon you to see in my mouth."
That's the most stressful part of going to the dentist. We can't see what they are doing.
You know what she said to me? Her and her assistant, they quit working on me and they just started laughing and laughing and laughing. And she said to me, she says, "You know what? I really needed a laugh today." So I gave back to her in a way that I like to give back sometimes. Yeah. And I told them other jokes while I was there and making them laugh, and they were relaxed as they were doing critical work in my mouth. And sometimes that's the other thing that I greatly believe in, because I believe in making people laugh. Mother Teresa, she says, never let anybody come to you without leaving happier. That was one of her sayings that most impacted my life. And I have a sign over the window of my house where the sunset comes through. And it says, "All I need is a sunset and love." Amen. And so I have both of those. I have sunsets and I have love. I have love from you. I have love from my wife. I have love from my children. I count my blessings every day. I have love from my grandchildren. And God's given me a daughter in you. And that's the most important thing that I want to do, is love people. Amen. Especially until they learn how to love others.
Absolutely, absolutely true. Amen. Thank you. And we share that love for a sunset because I always go up to my mountain and I watch the sunset in the summer, of course.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen to that. Thank you, Dad. And that brings me to the next question. And I was thinking when you were at the dentist, making them laugh was showing leadership. You were helping them along their day. So the next question would be, what leadership style do you employ when you're working with your students and your colleagues and the professors that report to you? Does it differ per situation, per personality? What leadership style do you like to use when working with people?
Well, it actually encompasses those different leadership styles that I mentioned to you, and that's part of situational leadership. You meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And you work to identify with their abilities, because they may not listen to you until they figure out that you actually either care or understand about their situation itself. And so when I'm dealing with students, sometimes I have these astoundingly smart students.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can feel that they're even smarter than I am. And I don't worry about them necessarily calling me Dr. Woods. Matter of fact, I shorten it to my middle initial and just have them call me Dr. G if they want to. And sometimes they just call me instructor, and sometimes they just call me by my first name, William. And I used to care about that. But at this age, I just don't care about that anymore. I care about them being successful, not only in my class, but also, or my courses, but also in life.
Yeah.
And so if I put them first, so at that point, I'm starting to apply servant leadership. Then I can take them for where they are in life and start to get them on the path to where they need to be in life. That's transformational leadership. And when I have to give them a certain grade because they didn't perform to level, then I also let them know what they need to do to improve. And so when I'm grading, that becomes transactional leadership. And with transactional leadership, if you do this, here's the reward I will give you.
Wow.
And so I'm starting to apply all those, but then on top of that, start to look at ethical leadership. So I want to grade them according to how they performed, not according to what I think about them, no matter what they've said in class. And so, I really had to do that one time in life. I had a student say something so derogatory to me in class in front of everybody else, and it was in the form of a question.
Oh my goodness, that's the worst.
Yeah, and some of the students came up to me, male and female, after that class and says, "If you don't get rid of him, we're quitting your class." And I said, "Look, you guys, let's give him a second chance."
Yeah.
And I worked with him, and he never did anything like that again.
Wow.
And so that's being ethical. That's being fair.
Yeah.
That's not biasly grading his submittals in a way that would become unfair. And I've had that happen to me one time as a student.
Yeah.
And the college ended up throwing the grade out. And so, I got fairness out of that anyway. And so all of those different elements start to come together in that situational mode, in meeting students where they are and then working with them till I get them where they're supposed to be. Because, every class has a set of objectives, every course that are preordained that students have to achieve. And so that's where they need to be. Now, the thing about it is, especially with my type of students, they're adult students. They're already in their careers, working full time, and they often are married or single, and they have children. So they have multiple responsibilities. Some of them have aging parents that they're taking care of and their children. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of difficult with them. So that means that they're staying up late at night trying to get their work done. And, they can't always be on time. And then some
Yes.
of them, just like the situation we've been experiencing the last 2 years, are getting hit with COVID. And some of them are getting hit with drastic versions
Mm,
of variants
mm,
of COVID that's really taking them down and hospitalizing them. But they still somehow want to make it through if they can.
yeah.
That means I got to set aside the rules of timeliness
Yes.
and whatever I feel about that. I don't even care if they're telling me the truth about their situation in life.
Mm.
I'm going to trust what they say about what they actually need.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
And so I'm just going to deal with that. And I'll let them know. I think that you're worth
Yeah.
extending the deadline because I want you to be successful. And you know what? In my end of course surveys, there's always something in there about
Yeah.
me having been fair to them, having believed in them, and sticking by them. And I lost one student one time, and I literally mean I lost her.
Oh.
She had basically terminal cancer, and she was just trying to complete her degree. She wanted to finish, and she had a hope that she would still get better. And I talked to her on the phone every week,
Yeah.
because she was an online student. And one day the conversations ended, and I knew what that meant. She impacted me about meeting students where they are so to achieve what they need to achieve. And see, that impacts me with meeting people in general where they are so that they can achieve what they need to achieve. And as a leader, you have to consider, do you have the guts to meet people where they are? Do you
Mm,
have the guts to set aside your emotions, emotional intelligence, and perceive the emotions of others, and then to work with them? And that really takes intestinal fortitude sometimes, because people can wear you out. Sometimes
mm.
you might even burn out, and there are, genuine symptoms of burnout that we can be
Yes.
concerned with. But also know that other people will meet you where you are at the right time so that you can be reinvigorated, so that you can do what you were born to, the skills that you have
Yeah.
spent your whole life since your childhood developing, and then use those for good.
Mm, mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the more I wrap my mind around how you approach people, the more I realized your students, your colleagues, everyone that comes across your path, is that you have a heart-centered approach to people. You take every situation by its merit, and that is an amazing skill to have, because you gave her, especially the cancer student, you gave her that hope, that courage to continue. And I'm sure it meant a lot to her during the end, of her time, that she felt that she was accomplishing and she was worth your time, that you gave her every week. And sometimes we have leaders that are heart-centered and amazing and love people. Sometimes we have the opposite. And it brings me because we don't always have leaders that are empathetic to people that burn out, and to life situations, and to things happen. I mean, life happens. We can't always, sometimes there are things that happen, and, we make a mistake. And it really depends on who are we answering to, and how that situation will unfold. But having said that, what was the worst display of leadership that you've ever seen, whether it was at work or in a personal setting, or maybe someone you had to report to? What was the worst display of leadership that you ever saw in your life?
Okay, this is a bit difficult, because when you think about leaders, they are who they are. Uh, they're going to lead according to how healthy they are inside. And so a lot of us have a piece of us that's been broken by life. And we get into these defensive routines and self-preservation. And we may even become very, very, very selfish people. And the only thing that makes us feel good inside is the accolades of others. And some of the only things that may even only make us feel good inside is being able to control others. And so we concentrate not on leadership, we concentrate on power.
Yes.
And sometimes power is abusive, and abusers quite often hate themselves, not love themselves, they hate themselves. But because of how they are, they continue down that path and don't see a way out. And so then they don't often realize until it gets greatly disastrous, the abuse that they're fostering on other people because they're so ego defensive. They are so id driven.
Yeah.
And so with that being the case, they act in ways towards you where they won't build you up. They won't compliment you. They'll ask you questions that aren't actually trying to find out something. They're like, why did you do that? Instead of being, hey, could you do that? I need to understand because I think I like what you're doing. So why did you do that?
Yeah.
And they keep record of it.
Yeah.
And they'll talk to other people about it. They'll tell you how stupid you are in your face. That was dumb. That was so stupid. That was ignorant. Man, I don't even know why I hired you.
Yeah.
But they do that to good people.
Yes.
That makes them feel good inside sometimes. We have a situation that we call going ballistic here in America. People who are being abused by other people, sometimes they'll go to work and they'll start shooting people. They're looking for the person that they really want to hit. It could be groups of employees that made fun of them.
Yeah.
And it could be that particular leader. And so my worst example, it was on a job that I had.
Yeah.
And I learned from this guy. He owned the business. He was doing the things that I gave examples of just now.
Yeah.
And we had such high turnover. People would quit all the time because this guy was acting that way.
Yeah.
And so I determined in my heart, I was going to get a good reference out of that guy because I wasn't going to waste the time that I had there and not be able to use that in the future. So yes, I was acting selfishly. And I was acting in a mode of self-preservation. So I did my job the best that I could do my job. And where people would walk out and quit on the job, I gave him a 6-month notice.
Wow.
And I told him I wanted to do something else in life. And he says, "You're not mad at me?" I said, "Nope, I'm not mad at you."
Wow.
"You're not going to walk out?" "No, I'm not going to walk out, man.
Yeah.
This is where I work. This is what I do. And you are who I do it for." And that was the truth.
Yeah.
And so how he was derisive with me all the time. He wrote me a 1-page reference.
Wow.
He wrote me a 1-page reference.
He learned a lesson from you.
Yeah.
He learned a lesson from you.
And see, there was one time where he lost control and he hit my hand because he was mad at another employee.
Yeah.
And I grew up fighting, and I used to be able to fight very well. And I got fired up in my eyes at that time, and I looked at him, said, "Make sure that you never, ever hit me again."
Yeah.
And he said, "I didn't hit you. This is hitting stuff." And so he broke thousands of dollars worth of merchandise.
He was getting angry.
Yes, he was. And I want to tell you, what he was doing, that's the way he was in his private life also.
My goodness.
He had a son who ran away from home and tried to commit suicide by riding his bike off of a cliff face.
Oh.
He had an adopted daughter who was the daughter of his second wife, who ran away from home, and she wasn't even grown. His first wife was so despondent over how he treated her that she sat in her yard, poured gasoline over herself, and had a cigarette.
Oh my
That's
God.
who I was dealing with. He's the worst leader that I've ever seen.
Horrible.
And I had to figure out in myself how to deal with that situation, and it was not easy.
I can imagine. My goodness.
Yeah.
Horrible person. Yeah.
But I worked hard. I was loyal to him, and he gave me a one-page reference.
Wow.
So whatever you're dealing with now, don't act adversely with it so that
Yes.
you become another person. For a while, I became another person for the things that I put up with in life.
Yeah.
But I returned to the person that I needed to be, that my parents raised me to be. And those things have paid out 100,000-fold for me.
Wow.
And sometimes I'm being nice to people that it looks like they don't deserve to be nice to. But being mean to them doesn't change them. Otherwise, people will go to prison and get better.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. That's a valuable truth right there. I call that a golden nugget. Amen.
Okay. So I didn't appreciate being part of what he was at that time. And I know my mom couldn't appreciate that lady at the time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I appreciate the lessons that I learned from it.
Yes. Absolutely.
And have that outlook. Be patient, be persistent
Yeah. Yeah.
during those situations that you face. Be convinced in your heart and mind that somehow, some way, even though night gets darkest before the dawn, the day is going to come.
Amen.
And you'll make it through it.
Yeah. To remember that you will get through it, like you said. I think that's a difficult part where, when you're in that dark place, to remind yourself it is going to turn into something positive at some point. It will change. So now the other side of the coin, we would like to know, what was the best display of leadership that you've ever seen?
Okay. I would say that is the guy that I talked about earlier in this presentation, Jeff Toomberg.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm not a rich man. I think he and his brother are rich men. He's had me to his house, and we've sat down and had very intimate conversations. And I go to his business headquarters, and he has me in his office, and we sit down and have great conversations. He's taken me throughout his corporation and had me meet so many different employees. And I still think of myself as nobody. Why should he do that with me? He's just a guy I called on the telephone and told him what I wanted to do, and he considered it. He considered a nobody. Wow. And helped me when I most needed help. Wow. On a task that I couldn't get done by myself. And he's a guy who is very successful, very well known in these Quint cities or Quad cities.
Yeah.
You know, in his business, even though he's had national brands who had national popularity come in and try to compete against him and took out TV ads and radio ads, newspaper ads, or whatever, he doesn't run advertising. He doesn't spend his money that way.
Yeah.
He has such a loyal customer base because of how his employees treat the customers and the high quality of product that he shares with the community. And he has such admiration from all these different charities because he has been consistent with that and blessing them.
Yeah.
What he says is the truth.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk bad about people. And you know what? One of the things, he makes me laugh. That's a great sense of humor.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we get stupid with one another.
I think that's necessary.
Yep. And we're totally sober.
Even better.
Yeah. So we're like two little boys with one another. But yet he is a very important person in this community.
Yeah.
He is highly successful. He is transformative, and he is a servant leader. Wow. And so, high ethics. He'll open his books to me and let me see in his books.
Yeah.
He has integrity in reporting.
Yes.
So, I mean, that type of leader who can walk amongst the business leaders of the company, of the area.
Yes, yes.
But yet is good with the common person.
Yeah.
He is amazing. He is amazing.
Adaptable, absolutely. That is fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. That is so refreshing. I don't think there's many people out there that really conduct their lives like that. It's amazing to hear that you have such a wonderful friend. And we just want to say, to us, you are not a nobody. To us, you are a very special person, and you make such a great impact in society in every single life that you touched. And you do that globally, and we want you to know that you are very special to us. And we talked about empathy, we talked about emotional intelligence, and I would like to ask, and we've got 3 questions left, and I would like to ask, is empathy important in teams? And I see empathy going to emotional intelligence. How important is emotional intelligence as well? Because we need to not only focus on the hard skills that the corporations always used to go on about. I think I read a post, I think it was on LinkedIn the other day, that said soft skills are more prominent now, the need thereof, and it's almost as if it's a superpower. So bringing empathy, emotional intelligence, and superpowers into the equation. What is your opinion on that?
Okay, 2 things. You ventured into the subject of soft skills and you combine that with empathy, and that's can be considered as soft skills. But we now no longer call, and that's where I am with the group that I fellowship with, kind of. We call soft skills power skills, and you talked about there being power in it. And you are absolutely 100% right, because it gives you power with people that they recognize. Because just as you're trying to work to empower them, they empower you by giving you permission to be part of their lives, because they can trust you. Because even though, like, you can't go through cancer with them because you don't want cancer. Yeah. You can't go through some of the emotional upheavals that they can sometimes face in their private lives.
Yeah.
You can be there with them and understand what you can understand and stand by them and support them and acknowledge that you know what they are going through and that you're going to be on their side. Empathy in its truest form.
Yeah.
Being loyal to the people that you are working with in a team.
Yeah.
And encouraging that loyalty out of them. And not all of them are going to be that way. Some of them are going to be self-seeking. Some of them are going to be jealous of you, that you were the one that's been chosen to do that. Some of them may even take steps to undercut you. They may report out from the group when it's not their responsibility to report out to the group to others. And they may run with it, and they may even take credit for work that you're doing. And I've had that happen in my career. It's very, very important that you understand they just are who they are. I actually believe in the example of Stephen, that even though it looked like the people who were stoning him to death,
Yeah.
were convinced that they knew what they were doing.
Yes.
Stephen said, they don't know what they're doing. Don't lay this sin to them.
Yeah.
Jesus, even though he had gone through scourgings with a whip that had bone in it and glass in it, and ripping his flesh open all the way to the bone.
Yeah.
And being spit upon and having part of his beard ripped out from, man, just pulling one whisker out of your ear can really hurt sometimes. But he's having part of it ripped out from his skin, and then having nails driven through his hands and feet.
Yeah.
And being mocked when he was on the cross, and then being given vinegar instead of water to drink while he was thirsting on the cross. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, or don't lay this sin to them, for they know not what they do. I am convinced off of that lesson, those two lessons in leadership, that even though people seem like they're convinced that they know what they do, often they really don't.
Yeah.
Like, the people who are so terrible to people, that a person would be so broken in their spirit that they would shoot another person, did those people really know that they were setting that up?
Wow.
That person would resort to such dark powers. Yeah. And that now that is an epidemic here in the United States. Yeah. See, they've been doing that since they were children. And that's what they've learned quite often since they were children, to do those, to treat people that way. They don't know hardly anything else.
Yeah.
When I was off on the wrong foot and even doing some things evil, the difference between me and some of the people I grew up with, I didn't go to prison because I quit.
Yes.
Because I knew another way.
Yeah.
And I returned to those things that I should have been doing and left those other things. I don't believe that a lot of them knew any other way. So therefore, they couldn't totally understand what they were doing. Yeah. I want to talk to you just for a second about suicide.
Yes.
A lot of people, when they commit suicide, have run out of answers, run out of the ability to try to solve the problems in their lives. And when children commit suicide, I've talked to psychological advisors or counselors, and they were actually doctors in their fields, and they said children actually haven't internalized yet. They don't know enough about the permanency of the act that they are committing.
Yes.
I had an uncle commit suicide in our family. He was the first one. And we've had a couple suicides since then.
Yeah.
And one of them was a little cousin below me, a generation down from me.
Yeah.
And he actually hung himself on his bedroom door with his bike chain. I don't think my uncle knew that by him committing suicide,
Yeah.
that it would become an example in our family and others would follow his example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I look upon him in a forgiving way with mercy in my heart and not
Yes.
judging that because he was in a horrible place.
Yeah.
I believe that if he could fix himself, he would have, but he could not fix himself.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we, when it comes to empathy, need to think deeply and broadly.
Mm.
That the person that is standing in front of us or seated in front of us has a life, and not everything in their life they have control over. And
Mm.
that those things are in fact impacting them. But if you can somehow reach that person, be patient with that person, be
Yeah.
consistent with that person, be kind to that person. You
Mm.
might be the only person sharing them kindness, and they may turn from what they are thinking about doing. They may turn from what other people will suggest that they do that's not good for them. And they may
Yes.
stop and consider, and they may come back to you and seek more wisdom.
Mm.
So, yes, you must have empathy and you must be
Absolutely.
considerate of others. And you must see for them a future that they can't see now, but eventually they may see because you
Yes.
were in their life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Empathy is critical. People forget their actions have an impact on those people that they engage with. Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful answer. Thank you very, very much for that. And that brings us to the next question. What is next for you?
Tomorrow,
Yes.
I'm preparing a presentation for the Teaching and Learning Conference that our university is putting on, and I'm going to be doing it with another program lead. His name is
Yeah.
Charlie Minnick, and I've used to work for him in the past, and he's was a really good leader. Fantastic. He opened up some doors for me, and so it's really quite a great honor to be able to work with him. And our um, presentation has to do with becoming team members with people that you normally wouldn't expect to be team members with. And so he's leading another. Then we're looking at a couple of different departments in our university, and we're going to give an example of some things that worked out by us working across departmental lines and to solve a problem for just one student, and it took like 7 of us. And
Wow.
so it was amazing. Everybody went above and beyond, and we
Yeah.
started bringing information together that not all of us knew about, but each of us knew a little. And
Yeah.
we coalesced at the right time and worked with the student, and the student decided to go ahead and work with us and give us a chance to solve their situation.
Yeah.
And it worked out. And so there goes that teamwork subject
Yes.
again. And we weren't an official team, and
Fantastic.
we weren't each other's bosses.
Yes.
But it was exciting to work with them, and it's building up relationships also that
Yes.
could be useful
Yes.
in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Exciting work. Very exciting, groundbreaking stuff. Think tanks. I'm thinking of a think tank when you spoke about everybody coming together, letting that creative thoughts flow. And
So
it brings me to our last question. I can't believe it. The session just flew by. And
that's good.
the last question would be, do you have any words of wisdom for the audience?
Yeah, that's a big, broad question that makes it so that I can talk about anything.
Yeah.
Hey, spend time with children.
Yeah.
We often say that they are the future, Actually, they are, because each of you used to be children. And as you reach the children and sow into their lives, give to them little things, you don't even have to have money sometimes.
Yeah.
I've stood in the streets in my neighborhood and just brought out a ball. And one time I brought out a ball and a bat, and I had an 80-some-year-old man standing in the street, and he pitched. Oh, it was a kickball. I'm sorry. He pitched the ball to the kids who were up at the plate, and they would kick it. And these are little kids and even teenagers, and they're all just out in the street playing together.
Yeah.
You know, those kids, I didn't have to say, get out of my yard. I didn't have to say, please don't sit on my car. Please don't break into my house. I just spent time with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even an old neighbor who fought in World War II got out in the street and played with those kids. Now spend time with them. Help the kids. And amazing enough, one day those kids might end up helping you as you get older and get a gray in your hair and physically don't work the same way as you used to, but they remember how you worked for them.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely fantastic advice. I love that. I also have a heart for children and youth and young adults, and you couldn't have phrased that better. The way that you articulated that was fantastic, and it's something that everybody had to be reminded of today. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for a phenomenal interview, a wonderful session. We've learned so much. Thank you for your time and your experience and your kindness and your support and love. Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome, and thank all of you for being here today. That's the peace sign.
Yeah.
I thank all of you for being here today, and let me share in your lives, and I hope that it does well for you. So take good care and be blessed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And to the Meticulous Moments audience, thank you for joining us for a lovely session. We are going to make Dr. Wood's contact details available after the session. Network with him, reach out to him, and let's cheer him on as he's busy with phenomenal work out there, working with the leaders, raising new leaders for the future. And we thank you, and we'll see you in the next session. Goodbye.